Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. Bruce, you want to introduce our guest?
Yes, Scott Ostler is an award-winning columnist who really broke through in the 1980s with the Los Angeles Times, a beat writer with the Lakers during their great years when Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and that team that won 5 rings was there, and then later became a columnist with them, and then he was lured north in the 1990s to the Bay Area, and we've had him with the Chronicle for a number of years. He's covering this NBA final series, and it's kind of a fever pitch right now, Scotty. As we speak, the series is just about to get underway, but I'd like to talk a little bit about LeBron James, because so much of the attention is on this guy. I mean, he may be at the peak of his powers, and are the Warriors, do you think, in the mindset of, all right, let LeBron have his 40, we're going to worry about the rest of the guys on this team and not so much about LeBron?
Well, I think they're spending a lot of time concentrating on him because he's their whole team. So I don't think they're going to say, well, just let him get his 40 or 35 or 45 or anything like that. I think they're going to, you can't go 5 on LeBron. That would be suicide. But I think one thing they've done all season long is mix things up. So whatever they do in LeBron, I think in the first game, in the first half, is going to be different from what they do in the second half or the second game or the third game. They're going to totally mix it up. They'll maybe double team him. They'll run different guys at him. They'll try different strategies. And even if something's working for a while, they're still going to change it up. But he's their main focus for sure.
And of course, the Warriors have such depth, and we've talked about this over the last several months here in the Bay Area, but I think fans around the country are realizing just how good this Warrior team is. You don't win 67 games by being a fluke. So I think that most people in the know would figure the Warriors are kind of the favorite to win this thing.
Yeah, and you've got, if you want to strip away all the emotion, go to Las Vegas, you check with those guys who don't have any emotion at all. They're just very analytical. And the odds makers in Las Vegas have the Warriors as a significant favorite. So it's hard to see that. It's hard not to look at this as just a golden opportunity for the Warriors to step in and grab this thing. And then the only thing that can stop them is if they don't function on it the way they know how they can.
Well, it seems like Clay's going to be coming back pretty strong. Good thing they had enough time to get him to recover from the concussion.
It's almost weird how fortunate the Warriors, maybe I shouldn't say this, how fortunate the Warriors have been this year in terms of injuries and guys missing and everything like that. They really haven't lost anybody. They had one significant injury early on. It was David Lee, and what that did is that opened the door for Draymond Green to step in and become a huge player. And so the one injury they had on those really was benefited them. They just been incredibly lucky, which you have to do to win, but it continues with Clay coming back because he could have been knocked out the whole series.
You think it's a good thing that the series is starting a little late, that there's this break between the conference finals and the series almost a little over a week, because maybe it's given some of the guys a chance to heal up. Maybe Kyrie Irving isn't going to be as healthy, but some of these other guys are.
Yeah, that's the thing. If the Warriors are healing up, so are the Cavaliers. And LeBron James, even though he's looks like a Sherman tank, he gets beat up too, and he needs recovery. If it was up to me, I would have given him about 4 days in between. I think I ate this too many, but they didn't ask me.
They never do, Scott.
They never do,
Yeah. Well, looking at this series, I think before the season started, a lot of people figured LeBron will be there. This is his 5th title shot, even though he's going to a new team. And a lot of people figured that the Warriors might have a chance to make it, maybe as far as the conference finals. But did you, because you've been out to a lot of games this year, Scotty, did you see this kind of coming as we got towards midseason when they had that long winning streak when they were something like 21-2?
Yeah, well, I started seeing it about midseason because I'm not completely blind, but for sure at the beginning of the season, I was impressed with Steve Kerr from the very beginning. I thought, this guy's going to be really good. Really fortunate landing this guy. But who thought that Steve Kerr and just a couple of assistant coaches and basically some seemed like minor tweaks to us is going to make a difference. We're going to take a 51 team, 51 win team, and up to 67 games. That's just crazy. I don't think anybody saw that coming. I was talking to Bogut yesterday, and I asked him, and he said, I just thought, like everybody always says, 1 year you get playoffs, next year you get the second round, you work your way up. It's a step ladder thing. So you're saying, I thought things fall into place when they're really good, work hard. Maybe in a couple of years we'll be in the finals. And I had some clue we were going to get here this soon.
It seems like everything's running on all cylinders. The stars are aligning, as they say. They just gotta. I still think they got to work on the offensive rebounds, though. You know, it's like they assume because Curry is so good at shooting threes, as soon as he throws it up, everyone starts running back. And
Yeah.
Well, it's fun.
They,
Go ahead.
they put such an emphasis on defense, they don't want to give the other team that counterattack. So I guess that's part of the problem as far as offense.
I was going to say, Scotty, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but you were talking about defense right there, and that's the key to the Warriors. Last time they won it 40 years ago when Rick Barry was there, he always, and I worked with Rick at a station in San Francisco for a couple of years, and Rick always reiterated the fact that defense was what won that championship, and it's defense that really is responsible for keying everything.
well, if you think about it, what's a typical good team shooting from the floor?
Yeah, what is a typical good team?
55%?
No, I don't think it's that high. What is it?
It's in the high 40s.
High 40s.
High 40s. So
yeah.
you got to figure that if you can get any kind of defense, you're going to push them down into the low 40s or maybe even the 30s. You know, scoring only 1/3 of the time or so. You know, you got a really good shot to win that.
Yeah. Well, and Scotty, I guess what I'm saying is, you know, Draymond Green, you mentioned him, terrific defender. You put him on sometimes they're bigger guys. Curry's not a great defender, but he's good. Klay Thompson can be a shutdown defender. There are several other guys in that team that really pride themselves on that, and that's not something. It seems like the NBA is coming back to the old style of play where it's more of a team game rather than a one-on-one ISO game.
Yeah, definitely. And for all the, you know, the line has been all year long. The Warriors last year were tough defensive team. This year they kind of retooled their offense a little bit, made it a little bit better, which they did. But I think they've also improved on defense a lot, and that's been somewhat overlooked. That they were, yes, Mark Jackson did reinforce defense. He made that an emphasis. He made them a better defensive team. But I think they made the quantum leap this year. They're a better defensive team for a lot of reasons. One reason is Kerr, and he brought in Ron Adams as assistant coach. And Adams is considered a defensive genius, and he's made the guys work. He's changed the defense. He's made it more of a less of a just go out and play hard defense, and more of a thought process that process behind it. Not that Mark Jackson wasn't a guy, but for Jackson, but Adams has made it more of a real deep defense. And then of course they've had guys come along, and one big difference is Steph Curry, because last year they always told Steph, all right, go out and guard the easiest guy on the court, so we need to save you. This year he came to him and they said, Steph, yeah, that's not good enough, man. You're a one-dimensional player. We want to turn you into a two-dimensional player. We want you to play defense. And Curry, to his credit, said, let me have it, man. Let me know what to do. They did, and I'm not saying he's on the he's a defensive demon or he's the best defensive player, but he's made a big leap forward in defense. And surprisingly, his offense got better too at the same time.
Yeah, a couple of those steals, you know, really kind of came in handy at the right time. You know, it's funny. Draymond Green is kind of reminding me a little bit of Magic Johnson. You know, coming in as sort of a center. You know, remember during the finals that year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're both Michigan State guys. They're both almost like they were inoculated with the same phonograph needle when they were born. They're both phenomenal talkers and both phenomenal people persons, I guess you could say. Magic was always great with everybody, with kids, adults, crowds, individuals, with the media, the public. He was always great. He's just warm and charming. And Draymond has a lot of the same things. Draymond's a little bit wackier, kookier than Magic.
Yeah.
A little bit more offbeat, really funny guy.
Well,
but he's been so much a heart and spirit of that team.
Hey, Scott, hopefully you can stay with us for one more segment. We're going to cut to a quick commercial break here, and here's our first trivia question. The theme is basketball finals. Which former ABA team by name was the first to win an NBA championship? Now, Scott, you can't answer this yet because we're going to cut to break, and when we come back, if you know the answer, you can answer it. The first three emails with the correct answer are going to win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Email Edward at sportsecon101.com the answer to this question. Which former ABA team by name was the first to win an NBA championship? All right, stay with us. You're listening to Sports Econ 101, and we will be right back. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure who that would be. Do you, off the top of your head, I'm thinking Utah, no, because they haven't won a championship. Indiana, no, because they haven't won a championship. Kentucky, no.
The Nets, no.
No, the Nets, no. Yeah, there were some good teams in the. Oh, maybe San Antonio. San Antonio Spurs. There you go.
Yeah. There you go.
It's got to be San Antonio.
It's a bit obvious, but
We will let you answer the question when we
Okay.
get back.
Okay.
See if you are correct.
Okay, so we're going to get going in just a
Yeah,
second.
yeah,
We're
just gotta
gonna
save
get
the
you out
file
of
here real quickly.
The nice thing about doing this is we don't have to play the spots. We just record it on a laptop here, and then it magically is transformed once it gets to the radio station. Okay. What a beautiful day, Scotty. I was out hiking today with my dog. It was absolutely stunning. 72 degrees, breezy. Oh, God. Gotta go to the Giants tonight, so it'll be nice. Okay.
All right, ready?
Here we go.
Okay.
All right.
And away. You guys don't hear a humming sound, do you?
No, not at all.
You know, it's just my earpiece.
Yeah.
That's fine. Here we go. Well, welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Again, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. When we got to the first commercial break, we asked this trivia question. Which former ABA team, by name, was the first to win an NBA championship?
I'm going to let Scott answer that. I think I know the answer, too, but go ahead, Scott.
well, and you guys gave me so much time to think about it. Even I can come up with the answer, I guess. But and it should have been obvious, but longer than I thought. San Antonio Spurs.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And
that's
the
the Spurs.
1998-99 season over the Knicks.
And, of course, the ABA went out of business, I think, in 1979 or 78, wasn't it, Scotty? They were around for a good number of years,
Yeah, I
right?
think so. Although they didn't go completely out of business because some of their teams were absorbed into the NBA.
Yeah, and I want to mention, we'll get back into the here and the now, but I want to mention Scotty was covering, Scott Ostler, our guest from the San Francisco Chronicle, was covering for the LA Times back in 1980 when Magic Johnson, his rookie year, and the Lakers dethroned the Seattle Supersonics, and Scott and I must have passed each other a few times in the hallway during that conference final series because I was up in Seattle working at a radio station. And the thing that I always remember about that series, Scotty, was that they had to play two of those games, not at the Kingdome, where the Sonics play most of their games, and not at the Seattle Center Coliseum, where they had been playing in years past. They had to play at Heck Edmondson Pavilion on the University of Washington campus, and I think that place only held about 7,500 people. You remember covering that series?
I absolutely do. And, you know, the funny thing about it is that when the game got transferred to Heck Edmondson, nobody really said anything. It wasn't like, oh, my God, how can we play in a little gym like that? Because that was more the reality of the NBA back then. In fact, you guys probably remember this, but when the Lakers got into the finals against Philly, games at night were games on the East Coast were tape delayed in Los Angeles. So if you were a Lakers fan, you didn't get to see the game until 11 o'clock at night when it was already over. So that's how much of a dark ages that was back then for the NBA.
Yeah, they didn't DVR it, did they? Well, in fact, I remember when Magic and Larry Bird, didn't they come out the same year, right? And I remember they were talking about how, the NBA was dead, but these guys basically saved basketball. You remember that?
You know, that is, people say that now, and some people might think, well, that can't be, that's just old-time thinking, and that you guys couldn't make that much difference. It's absolutely true.
Yeah.
You guys, they both dropped in with all-time franchises, with Boston and the Lakers, and they revitalized them, and it really woke up the whole league. The league, for a lot of reasons, including drugs and other stuff, was just really on a decline. It was really struggling. It was really in a huge slump in terms of fan interest and stuff. And Magic and Bird just basically, two of them, man, they started the whole renaissance of the NBA.
Just a quick question on that. Did it decline again at some point? And then, because now it seems like it's even bigger, obviously. Did you see any decline after they came in? You know what I mean? Like 1988 or something? Yeah. Or once they came in.
In some ways, it's kind of like the economy in sports league is. It's just going to be ebbs and flows, and they can be long waves. Like baseball's been riding a pretty good wave of prosperity. Football for sure, and NASCAR.
Yeah, but when they have a strike now.
The thinking is just like it was with the economy about 4 or 5 years ago, is that this is going to go on forever. Prosperity is just going to rise forever.
Well, Scott,
we're coming up against forces. They're coming up against the schedules are getting too long. The guys are becoming overpaid. The tickets are too expensive, and so at some point, I'm not saying anything's going to explode, but it's certainly going to level off or start heads down.
Well, I love baseball, but I'm still upset about the '94 strike.
Yeah, that actually affected my job. It was an interesting story. I don't want to get off on a tangent of that, but I do want to bring back Magic Johnson into the picture because you mentioned Draymond Green, sort of the heart and soul of the Warriors, And Magic Johnson, delightful. We all know what a great guy he was to deal with. I remember sitting down and just, talking with him. He acted as, he treated everybody the same, didn't he, pretty much, Scotty?
Yes, he did. He is, and still is. He was a joyful guy. I can just remember just one snippet. Back then, the media guys, and I was covering the team on a daily basis, we would ride the team buses. For instance, we would drive from the hotel to the arena in the team bus or the airport and so forth. And you'd be on the bus, the players would all be on, they'd be waiting, and here comes Magic, and he'd get on. He's this 19-year-old kid, maybe he's 20, and rookie on this team full of veterans. He'd get on the team, and he would just light the bus on me. He'd jump on and he'd say, "It's EJ the DJ coming your way with the stacks of wax, playing it your way." Just going to the all around. And the guys would just laugh.
That's great.
Did they always have respect for him right away?
I'm sorry?
Did they always have respect for him right away? I know they laughed, at his jokes and stuff like that, but did they look at him like some brash 19-year-old kid, or did they?
Well, it's weird, and I never figured it out totally. Even though I was there, I was at every practice from the beginning and all that stuff, training him. It seemed to me, through the haze of all these years, that it took about 5 minutes for him to win the team over and to take charge of the team. Again, he was 19 years old when he showed up. He had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He had Jamal Wilkes. He had these guys who had been around for years, kind of jaded veterans, especially Kareem. And yet, it took them, I think, seemingly about 10 minutes to realize, okay, if we're going to go somewhere, this is the guy who's going to take us.
Well, so he didn't just talk. I mean, he was a good player. I mean, obviously a great Hall of Fame player, but it's one thing. Some of these guys, they just talk a lot.
Well, he was exciting too. The way he played, the way.
They showed him practice. He didn't care about the talking. That would not have done it. He showed him practice, and probably about the first half of the first day, he hit about 5 guys in the side of the head with passes, and they started figuring it out because they're smart guys. That this guy's has something special, and let's see what we can do.
Like Pistol
And
Pete.
they were smart enough to buy in and to basically give Magic the team and give him the reins and say, take us on a ride, buddy.
It's interesting too because Jerry West was involved with that team, and of course Jerry West was a great player in an earlier era with Elgin Baylor and Wilt Chamberlain, and now Jerry West is an advisor with the Warriors, and he's been partly responsible for the revitalization of this franchise. You still probably deal with him from time to time because he's around. I mean, that's a great story. The logo of the league, has helped to resurrect the Warriors, going back to.
It's crazy because when Magic was a rookie, Jerry West was just an advisor. He had been a coach. He was in between coaching, and he would later become the general manager. But when he became a general manager, one of the moves he made a trade, and he brought in a guy named Michael Thompson, who was a forward. And bringing Michael Thompson in helped the team win a couple more championships. And so fast forward to 30-some years, and West is instrumental in helping bring Klay Thompson, Michael's son, to the Warriors. And again, last before the last trading deadline, when all the talk about trading Klay Thompson for Kevin Love, West basically, the way I understand it, put his foot down and said, if you guys are stupid enough to trade Klay Thompson, I'm quitting.
Wow.
I don't know if he told him that or if he just resolved in his own mind that, if they're not going to listen to me on this, I'm getting out of here.
That's impressive because Kevin Love is a phenomenal player.
Guy.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, I was going to say that's very interesting too with his dad having played, and all these relationships that we see in sports are kind of fun. I mean, Del Curry, the father of Steph Curry. But here's another relationship that's really interesting. How about Mark Jackson commenting on the network on a regular basis now in the postseason? He'll be the sideline commentator during the finals, and this has got to be a little tough for him. It's kind of like a guy videotaping his best friend's wedding. His best friend stole his girlfriend and is marrying her. I mean, that's crazy. What do you make of that whole thing?
Well, I think first of all, I think it's great theater in the sense you look at the big picture. We want to be entertained, and in that respect, I think it's great theater and it's wonderful. I think journalistically, it's kind of bogus because Jackson obviously has a rooting interest. If the Warriors win, it's almost like they're saying,
"Yeah, he started it.
We're much better under our new coach than we were with Mark Jackson." That's as the
Well,
word.
yeah, but also
We're
they,
gonna look at this.
yeah, but they can also look at it.
Jackson doesn't want Jackson would be. They've already exceeded what they could do under Jackson, but
Yeah,
I know
but
it's
Scott.
harder for him to say I could have done the same.
Yeah, but Scott, don't you think they also could have looked at Jackson as, hey, it was because of him with the building blocks?
Well, that's the credit of the Warriors.
Yeah.
Steve Kerr and all the guys. All along, they've said they've given Jackson his credit. They've said, look, he started this. He got the emphasis going on defense. He rebuilt the spirit of this team. We've just carried on from that. So nobody is discounting Mark Jackson.
Except for maybe Andrew Bogut, who doesn't. I guess those two just didn't.
He can't play, man.
Yeah.
He basically disenfranchised Bogut. He shoved Bogut out of a little circle, and I don't know why. It was because Bogut didn't buy Mark Jackson as a preacher, or Jackson resented that. I don't know. But
I always get scared when Bogut touches the
I'll tell you
ball.
what, if Mark Jackson was still here, I'm not sure Bogut would.
Yeah, it bothers me though about Mark Jackson, and again, I give him all the credit in the world for helping to turn this franchise around as well. But the fact that he would not want other voices in the room with him, and unlike Steve Kerr, who has brought in all that you mentioned, Ron Adams and Alvin Gentry, who's now going to the Pelicans. I mean, he had these guys. I'd never heard of any of his assistant coaches, and every time you'd look at them, they'd look away as if, I can't talk to you. It's almost like
they weren't allowed to talk to the media.
Yeah.
That's boil it down.
Too much
The reason
control.
Mark Jackson is not coaching the Warriors right now is because he wouldn't go out and hire at least one assistant coach like they have two of now, and Alvin Gentry and Ron Adams. Had Jackson done that, had Jackson done what Jerry West and Joe Lacob asked him to do, which is go out and hire a top assistant who can help you out with strategy and X's and O's and stuff. Had Jackson done that, he'd still be here.
Wow. Okay, we got to get to our second trivia question here. NBA Finals is the theme. Who was the first team, or I guess I'm going to say it this way. Who was the first team to lose 3 consecutive NBA championships? Okay? The first 3 emails with the correct answer. Going to win a free 3-day 2-night stay at Lighthouse Resort. Email Edward at sportsecon101.com the answer to that question. Which was the first team to lose 3 NBA championships in consecutive? All right? Stay with us. Sports Econ 101 will be right back.
All right, Scotty.
Okay.
So,
Hey, boys, I got it done.
yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for doing that. I appreciate it, Scotty. Good luck with the column. Look forward to reading it tomorrow.
All right, thanks a lot.
You got it. All
I
right.
got to say, it's entertaining. I actually like Jeff Van Gundy. I mean, he's very knowledgeable.
Yeah.
He's got
I like
really
having
good
him.
comments.
I love Jackson. Jackson is very good.
Yeah.
I love Jackson.
They don't like each other, or they like tease each other.
They do. I think they get along okay.
Yeah.
Jackson is an interesting guy, though, because part of me was really upset about him being fired. And in retrospect, I mean, a lot of issues.
And I like Steve Kerr. I mean, I've always liked him, so I knew that. I was upset with the same thing. I was upset when they got rid of him, but then when they brought Steve Kerr on, I go,
they were
that's
lucky.
really smart. Yeah.
They were lucky in a way. I think Steve Kerr also looked at the situation in New York and thought, I'm not going there. That place is a mess. Yeah. The owner's a boob, and Phil Jackson may be a good guy, but they don't have the makings of even a playoff team.
Yeah.
Yeah. And plus, I guess the turning factor was his daughter was going to school out here, and he wanted to be close to her.
Oh,
so,
that's good.
Yeah.
Kids will always prevail.
They will. They will indeed.
All right. What do you want to cover when we come back?
We can talk a little bit more about. Why don't we just finish off with the NBA and then kind of transition and want to talk into baseball? Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. Talk about what's going on with the teams right now.
Let's see here. Okay, so that was our second segment there.
Maybe some of the top young players that are coming into the game. One guy that really impresses me is this DeGrom with the Mets. Stephen Vogt is not a young player, but he's having an all-star season. Giancarlo Stanton's having a great year. I mean, there are a lot of players we can get
come back like that.
Yeah.
Vogt was you could see the potential in him.
Well, he never got a chance to play much, and sometimes a guy needs an opportunity. I mean, he had 2 guys in front of him, John Jaso and Norris. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go into.
Okay.
Yeah. Remember to. Tell you what, can we just so I don't forget?
Yeah.
Let's do our introduction.
Yeah. Sure. You can put the whole thing together, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Welcome. You're listening to Sports Econ 101, the show where we discuss sports topics from a business perspective. I'm your host, Edward Brown, along with my co-host, Bruce McGowan, long-term longtime sports radio personality.
Some people might say long term, which is not a good thing either.
We'll say longtime sports radio personality.
Yeah.
Today's show is going to be fun because we have a special guest, and he comes from the San Francisco Chronicle. He's a columnist, Scott Ostler, and we're going to discuss some basketball, a little bit of LeBron, a lot of Magic Johnson, going to go back to the old days, and discuss how he and Larry Bird sort of saved basketball. And at each commercial break, we're going to ask a sports trivia question. We're going to be giving away vacations to the first 3 emails with the correct answer. The vacations are not sponsored by the radio station, but by Lighthouse Resort and Marina. The vacations are free. Their only request is a $75 cleaning fee to cover the housekeeping expenses. Check them out at lighthouseresortandmarina.com. And let's see, today's trivia theme is going to be the basketball finals. Figured, you know what, we're getting into the basketball finals here. You got LeBron versus Steph Curry. I think it'll be quite exciting because you have 2 major forces on each, or at least a major force on each team.
No question. I mean, you got 2 guys that are the stars of the league, the face of the league right now, and they're both good guys.
Yeah.
Steph Curry is a great young player, and he's a nice kid. He's 27 years old. And LeBron also. They're both family men, and the league is lucky to have these guys around.
Yeah. And this segment of Sports Econ 101 is sponsored by Pacific Private Money, which is providing mortgage investments that are currently yielding over 8%, secured by Bay Area real estate. It doesn't get any more conservative than that. Check them out at pacificprivatemoney.com. And by the way, did you see a little article, and I guess it was Yahoo Sports, that talked about Steph Curry, and some teachers said, hey, please don't come to our school.
No, I didn't.
Okay, well, I'll mention that when we get back to that.
Sure.
I'll mention that when we get into the third segment.
Sounds good.
That one.
All right.
So stay tuned because you're listening to Sports Econ 101. When we come back, we're going to have San Francisco Chronicle columnist Scott Ostler on the phone. Stay with us.
All right.
All right, so that is segment 1.
You just email the file to
Darren?
Yeah.
Yeah, I include him in it, but it's mostly to his guys.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't really do much on that part.
How's Darren doing? I haven't talked to him in a while.
I guess he's okay.
Ron Barr is lucky to have him.
I like Darren. He's a very nice person.
He's a very good guy, and he keeps that place alive. They really took a horrible hit when ESPN Radio insisted to stations that if you're going to take our programming, you have to take it all. You can't take anything from anybody else. They lost probably 80% of their affiliates. So, they're still doing okay. Ron Barr is lucky because his wife has got a shitload of money. And also, he's just a hot little hustler. Although I will say this, Ron, I've known him for a long time. He doesn't show up to anything. And his attitude is, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Doesn't show up to games. Doesn't care about any of the games. I don't think he really cares that much about sports. I think he knows enough about history and knows enough to get by, but I don't think he really enjoys it anymore. It's more of a job to him.
I couldn't even go to game 1 if I wanted to because my daughter's got something in the city. But I gotta say, I guess maybe I'm getting at the age when I just really like to be in my nice little theater.
Oh yeah, well, it's a hassle. I got to leave at 2:30 on Thursday, and my buddy Rich Walkoff from KGO doesn't want to go that early. I said, Rich, they want me to work, and they want updates starting at 3:30.
Oh yeah, no,
I got to be there.
Working,
the thing is, he's working in the mornings, and then he has to work till 1 o'clock. Then he has to get up at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock to go to work.
Yeah, it's a whole all day.
So
All right.
Anyway,
so I'll get into that, and then we'll cover it.
He's having a rough time right now because they're screwing him over big time. They're changing his hours. They're making him work more hours because they fired Kevin Radich in the afternoon. It's bad. It's a bad scene.
See, that's why you need to be self-employed.
I kind of am. I'm just a freelancer.
That's it.
Yeah, it was for years.
It's segment 4. Here we go. Well, welcome back to Sports Econ 101. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. Now, in the first segment, we said I was mentioning about this Yahoo Sports article that talked about Steph Curry being asked not to come to the local high school here in the Bay Area. And it seemed like the teacher was basically getting at the idea of, listen, Steph, if you come, all these students don't really have a chance to do what you've done, and you may be giving them false hope.
Interesting. Well, there's a certain amount of truth to that. I think one of the big problems the NBA, it's not the NBA's had, but a lot of kids have had that are good athletes, is that when they're a star athlete in high school, they immediately think, oh, God, I'm going to get the big scholarship, and then I'm going to parlay that into a job in the NBA. Thing is, nowadays, about 28%, I believe, of all NBA players are foreign born. In other words, they're from Africa, they're from South America, they're from the Far East.
So we have a competition there.
Yeah, there's a lot. Andrew Bogut, the Warrior center, is from Australia. I mean, they're from every corner of the globe. So you're competing not only against the best in this country, but you're competing against the best in the world. And that wasn't the case until about 20 years ago. There were very few foreigners playing this game.
Now, they could play overseas.
You can play overseas, and you can make decent money doing that. I don't know how many people want to try to do that. It's a culture shock. If you're an inner city kid and you want to stay close to home, and playing in Europe is almost like playing on the other side of the moon.
Yeah.
So I mean it's a lucrative enough thing for you to do, and it's certainly an alternative. It's kind of like top soccer players. Well, guys that are not quite top tier soccer players come over here to the United States to play in the MISL because they can't play in the Premier League, or they can make a little money here and help the league grow, but they're not going to be playing at the same level.
No, but to be in the United States, some of them just want to be here anyway.
Oh, yeah.
If you
No
go over to
question.
China, I heard that in some places in China, the kids have never seen stars because the pollution is so bad.
Yeah,
Isn't
well,
that amazing?
it's sad. I mean, my parents spent time in Beijing. They taught at a university there, and they said the pollution was so bad in that city. It was horrific. And when they were able to get out of the city and go to the countryside, they said it was such a relief because it was just insane.
Wow.
It's really
That was how many years ago?
about almost 30 years ago. This would be back in the mid-1980s, before Tiananmen Square. And unfortunately, I think a lot of us here in the United States take for granted a lot of the things that we have, which is very, very good air quality and water quality regulations. But we get off on a tangent on that.
Course.
Yeah.
Okay. Which, by the way, you know what? We forgot to get back to the trivia question.
Oh yeah. What is the?
Okay. So the question was, who was the first team to lose 3 consecutive NBA championships?
3
And I
consecutive.
forgot to get the year on this, but I do know
Wow.
the team.
It's got to be the LA Lakers.
That's what I would have thought.
They lost to the Boston Celtics a bunch of times, but they didn't lose 3 in a row.
Not 3 in a row. New York Knicks.
New York Knicks.
So it must have been in the early days.
Yeah, it must have been. Yeah, I would have gotten that one. That would have been back in the 50s, I guess.
Probably.
Well, the Celtics from 57 or 58 through 69 won something like 11 titles,
yeah.
and I think 7 of them were won at the expense of the Lakers.
So
And the Lakers
how many teams were there back then?
Well, there were initially, I think there were about 8 to 10, and that stayed pretty steady from the late 40s to the mid-1960s. And then we had expansion, and then in 1967, 68, we had the ABA come along, and that lured a lot of NBA players away, Rick Barry, among others. And that league flourished for a short time, for about 9 or 10 years. There were 5 or 6 franchises. The Kentucky Colonels, the Indiana Pacers, of course, became an NBA team. Yeah. Kentucky was a very well-supported franchise, and it's too bad that team didn't get to join the NBA. There was a political thing involved. San Antonio, the Utah Jazz were around. Actually, they weren't.
New Orleans Jazz.
Well, there was the New Orleans Jazz. There was the Utah Stars, actually.
Utah Stars, okay.
Yeah, and they did very well. They had Zelma Beatty, a former star center with the St. Louis Hawks. They had some great players. As a matter of fact, I went to school at the University of Denver, and we had a team called the Denver Rockets, who later became the NBA Nuggets.
Yes.
Yeah, and they were very good. They actually won the ABA title the year before I got to Denver in 1969, I believe it was.
Well, it's hard to remember. And then the Royals are.
Well, no, you're thinking of the Kansas City Kings, who became the Sacramento Kings, who used to be the Cincinnati Royals. And initially, actually, they started off in Rochester in the 50s. They went to Cincinnati in the late 50s. They moved to Kansas City in the early 70s, and then they moved further west to Sacramento in the mid 80s. They have had 4 different cities that they've represented.
And the San Diego Clippers.
San Diego Clippers were, moved to Los Angeles, but I mean, there's all sorts of movement. The Houston Rockets actually started in San Diego, and the Warriors, the team that's going to the NBA Finals against Cleveland, started in Philadelphia. Yeah.
That one I knew.
Yeah.
That's because that's local for me.
Well, and they won 2 championships there. They won Philadelphia with Will Chamberlain, and they won the very first championship in 1946, I believe it was, 46, 47. They won with Eddie Gottlieb as the coach, and he was the owner. In those days, you didn't have to have. You had to have money, but you didn't have to have you didn't have to be a super millionaire to own an NBA team. It was a much more modest enterprise in those days. I remember going to games in the mid '60s with my dad, and the Warriors here in the Bay Area drew well. They drew about. It sounds puny, but they drew about 6,000 fans a game. That was about average for the league. And it was fun going to those games because you could go the night of the game, get good tickets. It wasn't that expensive, and you'd see these great athletes. You'd see Oscar Robertson and Jerry West and Clyde Frazier and Nate Thurman and Rick Barry. And it was such a treat. Walt Frazier. Well, Clyde was his nickname.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Clyde Frazier. Everybody calls him Clyde because he wore the outfit that he. The colorful outfit that he used, or Earl the Pearl Monroe, or Pistol Pete Maravich. I mean, we got to see that. I got to grow up in the '60s watching these guys play. And I remember going to games with my buddy, and we'd pay $5 and we'd sit halfway up maybe $4 and sit halfway up into the bleachers at the Cow Palace of the old Civic Auditorium in San Francisco, and there'd be 7,000, 8,000 people there, and it was great. It was so much fun. They didn't have all the screaming announcers and the laser lights and the dancing girls. It was just basketball, and usually there was a little haze hanging over the top of the arena because everybody was smoking cigars or cigarettes. Yeah, it was pretty funny. Different era.
Yeah, but the interesting thing though is, I mean, it's not like these guys were a bunch of chumps.
No, they were great players.
Those players.
Wilt Chamberlain, Earl Monroe, Pistol Pete Maravich, they could play in any era, and they knew the game, I think, better than some of the athletes of today. I think the game today is going back to being what it used to be, where people concentrate more on passing and spacing and defense, and it's not all one-on-one ISOs that you see so often.
That's a good point. This last series of against the Rockets, I was watching, and I'm noticing that the Warriors, it was amazing. 4 or 5 guys would handle the ball many times.
No, they space the floor out. They find the open man, and a lot of teams, the good teams, do that. One thing that really bothered me about Michael Jordan, he was such a great player, but everybody, this whole thing, be like Mike, everybody wanted to be like him. So you saw a lot more of the individuality emerge in the 90s in not only college basketball, but high school basketball. Those are the fertile grounds from which the pros get their top players. And I think, unfortunately, unwittingly, Michael Jordan brought about this whole trend towards being more selfish and more centered, one-on-one kind of basketball. And I think we're getting back to the old thing. I remember going to the NBA All-Star game, Edward, in 1996, and there was they had the slam dunk competition, which is fun, but I mean, it's just a slam dunk. We used to see 5 or 6 of them a game, big deal. It's actually a better percentage shot to drop it in the hoop rather than slam it. How many times have you seen a guy hit the back of the rim sometimes and the ball pops out? So, I mean, and there was the announcer was going, "This is what the NBA is all about." And I was thinking, yeah, unfortunately, you're right to a degree. And I didn't care.
Supposed to, but
well, yeah, I mean, and, guys getting out of college early. I remember it didn't happen back in the 70s and even the 80s. There weren't that many players. You had to be really good, like Magic Johnson or Moses Malone, to leave school early. And then,
or Sean Kemp, the
or Sean Kemp, or LeBron James, but those guys were the exception. I remember there was a guy named D'Antonio Wingfield who played with the University of Cincinnati, big star with the Bearcats at the University of Cincinnati, and he, I think, lasted 2 years in the NBA because they signed him to a huge contract. He was a total washout. He didn't know how to play the NBA game because he hadn't matriculated through college. He played 1 year, freshman year, and put up some good numbers, but that was just an example. So I'm old school all the way.
And I think I've appreciated, like, LeBron has matured, and if you notice, he is passing more. Because a few years ago, he, definitely was more of the Michael Jordan.
Well, he still can be that way, and I think he has to be that way because he's so much more of a dominant player than anybody else out there. But you're right, he has matured, and he has. When he came into the league, and we were looking at him, he was 19 years old, I believe, and maybe 18. I think this guy's not 18, 19. He looks like he's 26. Now he's 30, and he looks his age. He hasn't really changed that much. Physically, he's gotten a little thicker, but you see his face. His face looks almost identical to what it looked like 12, 13 years ago.
He probably kept somewhat of a clean life.
A very clean life, and he's a homebody.
Tattoos.
Well, everybody has to have the tattoos. That's part of the world.
No, I don't think Steph Curry, I don't think.
No, I'm just saying, not everybody, but I'm just saying everybody seems to want to have the tattoos.
It's interesting, too, like, James Harden, he seems like a really nice guy.
Very soft-spoken,
But, it's interesting. He, again, sometimes it seems like he has to take over.
Or
it feels like he has to.
Yeah.
And, one game he puts up, 45 points and he's just dominant. But when he starts losing it a little bit,
You know, that's the problem when you depend too much on one guy, even LeBron. And I think also James Harden is only 24. He's a very bright young man.
Yeah,
24, 25.
He looks older too.
Yeah, well, you know, he carries himself. I noticed hanging out in the press conference the other night at the finals, the West Finals with the Warriors. He handles himself really well. He's just, you know, like a calm, quiet island out there. He's not hypersensitive. He's smart. He knows the game. They're lucky to have him. I was surprised Mark Jackson, the former Warrior coach, picked him as the MVP over Steph Curry, his former player. And Steph was a little bit miffed by that because they had a good relationship. Steph actually stood up for Mark Jackson when the Warriors management fired him and said, I don't like this move. And, you know, but Mark Jackson has his, just like we all do. We all have our little idiosyncrasies, and that's one of them. I guess he just, something about James Harden he liked over Steph Curry. I don't know.
Yeah, it was a tough for a lot. I know you got like a lot more votes, but it was tough for a lot of people to, you know, to look at, because you got to look at they're different players.
Well, different players, different teams, but I think Steph Curry really, Harden is probably depended upon more by his teammates than Curry in some respects because Curry has a deeper bench to work with. But Curry can take over games too, and I think he's I just think he's a more well-rounded player.
You know, that's problem. That could be the point, is the fact that because the Warriors do have a deeper bench, it's a little harder to see him being as most valuable player.
Well, and also Curry is just more of a magician out there. I mean, his passing, his dribbling, he's kind of like watching a guy from the old days of the Harlem Globetrotters. I mean, it's just amazing some of the moves he makes out there. Like, you know, like Meadowlark Lemon or that guy that just passed away recently, Marcus Haynes. Yeah, that guy was a magician, and it's a shame we didn't get to see those guys in the NBA because back in the 50s when those guys were prominent, the NBA had a quota and only would allow 1 or 2 black players. It wasn't written anywhere, but believe me, it was part of the deal, and it wasn't until the 1960s that African Americans really got a fair shot in all sports.
They could. Why could, except for Harlem Globetrotters per se, why couldn't they have just had a team? Just, you know,
well, I mean,
like Grambling.
Yeah, the problem is finding ownership at that time. And I mean, we seem to forget, a lot of us, that, you know, I was just a kid during the 60s. I was 8 years old in 1960, but I remember vividly the separation of cultures and of races, and it was very apparent in sports. You know, there was integration, but it was moving in a very in the 60s.
Separate but equal.
Yeah,
Well, Press Maravich in the movie The Pistol, he can see the fact that the black players, he goes, man, this is the future.
Yeah.
And there's a game against it. It's actually a cute movie. Okay, we're going to go to our third and final commercial break. Here's our trivia question. Again, the theme is the NBA Finals. The Boston Celtics ran off 8 consecutive NBA championships until which team in the 1966-67 season stopped their streak? The first 3 emails with the correct answer are going to win that free 3-day 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Email edward@sportsecon101.com. The answer to this question: Boston Celtics ran off 8 consecutive NBA championships until which team in the 1966-67 season stopped their streak? Don't touch that dial. You're listening to Sports Econ 101. We'll be back with some closing comments.
I know the answer to that one was the 76ers.
You know, is it because I told you the?
No, I remember that season so well. That was the first year I really paid attention to the NBA.
Now, what if I didn't say the year?
67?
Well, I know it was.
I
Okay.
remember. I remember because Wilt Chamberlain, Hal Greer, Luke Jackson, Billy Cunningham, and Wally Jones. That was the starting 5.
There you go.
And Wally Jones' younger brother, Billy, played at the University of Denver, where I went to school, and he was a star point guard. Billy Jones.
You know, Sarah looked at Denver University.
It's a good school. It's okay. It's expensive. It's
I mean,
private, but it's not.
She's going to go to Chapman, but
Chapman's a good school. Yeah.
Those are a Christian.
Denver University is a good school. It's a nice school. It's not too big. It's about 9,000. It's right off of downtown, so it's not in downtown, but it's close enough. It's like a 10-minute drive.
How do you deal with the elevation, though?
It's not a problem if you go up to the mountains enough. Now, for kids from the funny thing is, Denver University draws probably about 60%, 70% of people from the east, from the Midwest and the east, and they have a problem because most of them haven't been to the high country.
Yeah.
So they have a problem. Yeah. I never did.
A little claustrophobic too.
You know, it takes a while to get used to breathing that air. At first, you notice it pretty quickly if you're not used to it. Yeah.
All right.
It's very healthy though. It's very healthy to live at a higher climate.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why the athletes train at the Air Force Academy or at Colorado Springs. They used to for years.
You train there, and you come down to like Death Valley, and you could run forever.
Yeah, I remember when I used to come home from after being there for 6 months or 4 months, whatever it was,
Yeah.
played basketball. I felt like I could play all day long.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing.
There you go. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Again, last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host, and I'll be Edward Brown all day today. But for the last part of the segment,
I hope you're going to be Edward Brown all day.
I will be.
You go in the door and your wife's going to wonder, who is this guy? Jeez.
And my co-host, Bruce McGowan. Third final trivia question. The Boston Celtics ran off 8 consecutive NBA championships until which team in this 1966-67 season stopped their streak?
That would be the Philadelphia 76ers.
And name the players. You
Well,
know.
yeah, Wilt Chamberlain was the center. The starting guards were Wally Jones and Hal Greer, and Billy Cunningham and Luke Jackson and Chet Walker were up front. That was a great team. They won, I believe they won something like 68 games, and they beat the San Francisco Warriors in a great final series. Rick Barry was only in his second year, and Nate Thurman was. Those two guys made it to the Hall of Fame, two of the greatest top 50 players, and they beat him in a 6-game series. And my dad took me to one of those games at the Cow Palace, so I have a great memory of that. I was 14 or 15 years old.
Not bad.
Yeah, good stuff.
Know all that stuff. Okay, what were the shoe sizes?
Wilt Chamberlain had, God, I don't know, probably about an 18. The biggest shoe I've seen, though, it was Bob Lanier.
Bob Lanier, 23.
Yeah, 23. And Clifford Ray, who played with the Warriors back in the 70s, I saw him recently at an old-timers event. He came out with all the old players from that team that won 40 years ago. And I said, Clifford, how big is that shoe? And he goes, 18. 18. It looked like a boat.
Yeah.
I mean, he could go skiing with those shoes. Jeez.
I remember that commercial. They said they were talking about statistics, and it says, "Yeah, those are the 2 biggest feats in basketball." And then Bob Lanier puts his shoes up, and he goes, "No, these are the 2 biggest feats."
These are the 2 biggest feats. Bob Lanier was a card, by the way. I mean, I say that respectfully. He was funny. He had great stories.
All right, well, here's our thoughts for the day. Quick guys get tired. Big guys don't shrink. And that was the University of Washington basketball coach on why he preferred size to speed.
Which basketball coach in Washington? Give a name?
You know what? I had his name and I forgot to
I
write
was
it
going to
down.
know if it's Marv Harshman. He was up there for a long time.
Probably it was him. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. He was there a long time.
All right. And if you think small things don't matter, think of the last game you lost by 1 point. All right. Tune in next week to Sports Econ 101. We're going to be discussing sports topics from a business perspective, giving away more free vacations for answering sports trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm your host, Edward Brown. Well, we'll see you next week.
Good night, America.
So long.
All right.
Good.
Good deal.
All right,
go
sir.
into the city.